What if it's a person that is the distraction? We talked about the phone being the distraction. We talked about, not doing this. But what if it's a person in our life or people that are the distractions?
Well, then we teach people to become more assertive. You've got to become the number one person in your life. Just like getting on an airplane, they say, hey, take care of your own oxygen first before you try to put a mask on another. So many people are busybodies trying to save the world, but they're not saving themselves. So you got to be a little selfish. And it's important to tell people, like my wife knows I need time alone every day. I can't, because I'm around people and talking. I say, when I'm in my alone time, that's my time. Just let me meditate, whatever I'm going to do. Don't disrupt me. You need to be able to tell them that. And there are energy drainers and energy gainers. So when this is a true thing, there are energy vampires.
Now I know what you're thinking. What you guys, what you're selling. Now look, I know you all are on social media every day, especially people who trying to sell a business. You trying to promote your stuff. You trying to spread your message. You got the calling. You got the word from the Lord. All that good stuff, right? But you don't feel like it. You don't have the time to promote the social media. You don't have the time to create the content calendars. You don't have the time for none of that, right? So that is where my new package comes in. And this is called the Trust Builder Package. All right. So this is for those of you who want to create great social media content, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, YouTube. All right. And you need somebody to do your captions, descriptions for you that are high SEO, that'll get you pushed out there to the masses and to find your personal development audience, because you are more than likely a personal development influencer. So who does this cater to? Coaches and consultants, faith-based leaders, wellness experts, authors, podcasters, motivational speakers, educators, mental health advocates, you name it. All of you who are trying to see the betterment of your community. All right, this package is for you. All right, hit me up in the DM, email me, reach out on the Nazio platform, and I'll hook you up. What is going on, everybody? It is another episode of PSA Mentor Podcast. And I appreciate y'all. I took a week off last week just to recalibrate, because honestly, y'all, this is a lot. I'm running a whole machine. I only got one other person with me that helps with this. So me doing this, and then me ghostwriting social media content for my professional development influencers, and also podcast producing, helping people build their podcast literally from the ground up. And business has been booming. When I tell you, clients have been going up to the point where at some point I'm either gonna have to start. If some other people come along, I'm gonna have to either tell them hold on, or I'm gonna have to hire some more people so that we can, get it going. But ghostwriting full time is a lot, and doing your own podcast and running your own live stream, it's a lot. It can be a lot, and you definitely need a team. And it's funny because I didn't plan on saying that, but it kind of aligns with today's episode in so many ways. So let's get into this week's meme. So the meme reads: if you can't pray, eat, or sit with yourself for 5 minutes without grabbing your phone, you're not in control anymore. Now, this one we're gonna challenge that too, because what happens when you have so many deadlines and things? You know what I mean? And we're gonna get into all of that. So just hold on with me. Inspiration comes from, honestly, just my life, especially currently. I had got the revelation when I first went into full-time entrepreneurship. I think it was 2023, like around August, September-ish. And I believe I heard guys say, enjoy this now. Enjoy being able to just kind of wake up when you want to and just do the work at your own, lackadaisical, because when business starts booming, you're not gonna have the time to rest. You're gonna have to schedule your own naps. It might be like, okay, I got 15 extra minutes later in there, I can nap then, or I got to eat then. Like, it's really going to be like a full-time corporation in your own house. And with that kind of starting to manifest, it's crazy how things are working. But also, in the Bible, another inspiration, it says he'll bless the works of our hands. And I believe that is the season for a lot of people right now. But you have to stay consistent to what he told you to do. And you have to stay consistent to what you're called to do. Because a lot of times, y'all, we overlook what's already there. So let me just rant on about that, and let's move into the next segment for today, which is happy hour. So for today's happy, I want to rant. I'm addicted to my phone. I am. I admit it. A lot of us are addicted to our phones. We won't admit it, but you know, a lot of us have some even crazy addictions. I ain't gonna lie, but I am addicted to my phone. I check it. I have to check it regularly. I even in like I'll be reading something. I check it. I ain't gonna lie. I've been in trying to pray and I'll check it. I'll be at the gym and constantly check it. I'll go to the bathroom, have to bring it, and it is an addiction. But the first step is admit it. But a lot of people won't admit that. They'll make excuses like, "Oh, I can stop at any time." You know, that's what people say, especially the drunks or people who are like addicted to, you know, smoking weed. They'll be like, "Oh, I can stop at any time." If you could say, if you say I can stop at any time, 9 times out of 10 you can't. So keep that in mind, because a lot of people think that it's just that easy. If it was that easy, then you'd have done it by now. You know. Why do I think this generation is addicted to the phones? I'm not the expert at this, but I believe that that's just kind of it's a dopamine hit. It literally is a drug. You know, I've done my own research for projects for people, for myself, and just had kind of comments mentioned on this podcast, and people were talking about, you know, different strategies, you know, like maybe even sleeping with your phone outside the bedroom, which I have noticed does help. I just got to the point where I sleep with the TV off in my room. It might be on in another room, but it's not on directly in my room. And I think the next step is going back to now the TV off and the phone in another room. But I think that it's something we need to really unpack. And I'm excited for this episode today because this is kind of going to be another angle to do that. And, you know, I'm good at finding the experts, or they find me. And, you know, as I weed throughout people and I see who would be good for the podcast. So I actually am about to introduce my guest today. All right. He is known for these type of topics. He's very intellectual, very in depth with a lot of his research. He also there's a lot of things that I did my research on him about that I believe that he has the bandwidth to explain it in a way that I can't. And he's an expert in this area. So if you're struggling with being addicted to your phone, or you feel like you waste a lot of time on your phone, because there's nothing wrong with being on it, but we just look up, and if you look at their screen time, and honestly, my screen time each week averages 8+ hours, sometimes 9. That's a problem. So let's get some help with that. So the unknown addiction or the unspoken addiction. Let me introduce my guest for today, and let's get going. My God, what is going on?
Yeah, yeah, you're saying it right. I mean, the average person looks at their phone 300 times a day. And the
Yeah,
real question is, are you a pessimist or an optimist? Because if
right.
you're an optimist, it might be all right. This means if you're an optimist, if you're looking at your phone for something positive to happen, then you're not going to have the same response as somebody who's like a pessimist and thinks every time they get a ding, it's bad news, or they're looking at social
Yeah.
media or looking at the news. You know, these are bad things for our nervous system and our brain function because they trigger something inside of us. So they say we have a mental health crisis today, which we do, but it's really a physiological crisis because people are
Mm,
sitting too much. Your body needs movement and breath in order to function correctly. And every time you look at the phone, if you're holding your breath because you think some bad news is coming, that's disrupting your natural flow energy from your brain that moves down your spine and out to your limbs. They actually have the freeze response before the fight or flight. And that phone is disrupting the flow of energy, and we now know that we are energy beings. I mean, our National Institute of Health says we have a biosphere, this energy field around us that actually causes the problems to our physical body. So they're now understanding this thing called the biophotic system, which means the light, we have a nervous system, but we also have a system on top of that called the
mm,
biophotic system now, which we didn't have before 2018. So I
mm.
mean, we had it, but nobody named it. You know, so now
Right.
they're figuring out, hey, so let's say you look at your phone and you're a pessimist, or maybe you're worried about something, you automatically trigger a response in your liver. Your liver holds 25 grams of glucagon, but it's sugar. And as soon
Mm,
as you have that, it dumps into the bloodstream. This is really because we were born for the Serengeti, right? The lion's going to be after us, the tiger, we're part of the food chain, our body's going to run. But our brain doesn't know the difference between a threat on the phone and a threat in real life. So
mm.
it still dumps the sugar into the bloodstream. This is why a lot of your listeners might think, I don't eat sugar. Why did I get diabetes? Because your body produces all the sugar you need. You don't need to eat 1 tablespoon of sugar. your body produces it. But the problem is we're eating way too much sugar and we're producing it with fear. So think of now what happens when that happens, it disrupts your thinking because sugar is the most insidious thing for the brain. That's what
Mm.
alcohol is. Alcohol is just really condensed sugar that's going in and causing this neurological damage to our brain. So you can do it with a candy bar, you can do it with your own thoughts, and this causes your insulin to drip. Now, most people don't realize if you look around, when I was growing up, of course, it was in the 70s and 80s, and we had very few people that were overweight. If you look at
Yeah.
the music videos and the shows from the 70s, everybody was thin because we weren't under the stress we're under. We weren't eating all the packaged foods. The stress, though, is what's killing people. And they don't realize it because when that insulin drip starts happening, instead of it happening only when we have danger, what will happen is now that insulin continues to drip. And that insulin, for the listeners, that's a fat storage hormone, which tells your body to gobble up the sugar that your brain needs and store it in fat. So now you're in a constant cycle of cravings. When you talked about dopamine, every time you have a dopamine hit, dopamine never pays off. It's an adjutant. It doesn't give you a payoff. It's not like we could drink enough alcohol or do enough heroin or do enough cocaine or look at our phones enough times. Every time that addiction happens, we get that hit. It's more of I tell people it's back when you're in college and you're getting ready to go out on Friday night. You get all psyched up with your friends. You're going to conquer the world. And then you get to the bar and you go, oh man, this isn't in my head, it was much better.
Yeah.
It was going to be a much better experience because the world's greatest pharmacy is not on the corner drugstore.
Right.
It's between our ears, 30,000 different neurochemicals. So every time you look at that phone, you need to program yourself to say, hey, is this a good thing or a bad thing? If it's a bad thing for you, then learn to say no to that, and turn off the news,
Yeah.
listen to podcasts that are inspiring, that are going to give you hope, build more optimistic future.
Now listen, we about 10 minutes in. We haven't even got a full intro. We got a full. This is going to tell you what type of episode this is going to be because you didn't even introduce yourself yet. Now the YouTube people can see you, but you just said so much that I just saw at least 3 to 4 clips just from that beginning. And I'm gonna have to reiterate some things. But before we get too far, just for my audio listeners, can you tell the people what's your name, where you from, and where you live now?
Yeah. Sure. I'm Dr. Patrick Porter. I'm the founder of BrainTap. We started brainwave entrainment technology in the 80s with a company called Light and Sound Research. We were the first one to bring frequency medicine to the marketplace. We have 3,000 clinics using it around America. We're all over the world. We're doing, right now, as we're sitting here, 6 research programs are being done in universities here in America, Brazil, Italy, and India. So, and we're proving out that brain fitness is just as important as body fitness. So when you think about building your body, we all know we need to lift weights or walk or do something to keep muscles up. But most people don't realize that your neurology, the way your brain functions, in the same way, we need to exercise that neurological function. If not, as we age, most people don't realize when you were born, you were fully wired. Your brain was operating at 18.1 volts. As we age, our brain does something called neural pruning. We actually get stupider as we age, not smarter. So we have to challenge ourselves by reading books or getting out there socially or doing something to challenge our brain. This causes neuroplasticity or neurogenesis. So we can't regain those cells we lost, but we can build new ones if we do the right mental exercises and physical exercises. And that's what we'll go over today. And we've been doing, of course, I invented a piece of technology that's used all over the world. It's been award winning because we've actually had studies where we've reversed dementia in less than 6 weeks by taking everyone off the dementia scale by increasing their brain voltage. If you have a brain voltage under 7, I'm going to tell you that you're probably having dementia-like symptoms. If it drops under 4, you're going to have Alzheimer's. But you can improve that. Your brain can heal at any age. You just have to start doing the fitness, just like muscles. You don't want to let them fatigue to the point where you can't build them again. You want to keep them strong and supple so you have the balance. And also exercise causes something called BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factors, which also helps the brain to become more neuroplastic and gives you more energy. So there's a combination of things, but that's what we do here at BrainTap. We study it, we test it, and then we get it out to the field through our doctor network of 3,000 clinics.
Okay, good stuff. And like I said, you said a lot, but it's good because I like when you said one of the many things you said about having a pessimistic, optimistic kind of mindset earlier. And I'm definitely an optimistic person. Like I don't look at my phone thinking bad news. I think something. I'm thinking I'm anticipating good news every day. So, and I've noticed a difference in someone who used to kind of just live in a fear kind of mindset and just thinking, oh, is this going to happen? This is going to happen versus living like, I believe good news is going to happen. And I like when you made the comment that the brain can heal at any age. And a lot of times when we see our elders and they have the dementia and the Alzheimer's and things, it's usually because of, well, most cases diet, but also because a lot of them, didn't exercise as well. And they just kind of, I think the generations, because my parents are I'm 31, my parents are 61. So they're doing things a little differently, but their parents believe that, you just get old, you get sick, and that's just what it is. And that's like,
Right.
it doesn't have to be that way. And we've been
Yeah.
conditioned to just think that it does.
Yeah, I think 60 is the new 30 now because we have so many baby boomers like your parents. I'm like their age, and I'm not going to sit in a wheelchair, in a rocking chair, watching my grandkids play. I'm going to get out there in the water in my boat, and I'm going to play with them. I played football with my grandson last night. I plan on doing that till I'm not here anymore. But you got to plan on that. The old saying is you got to plan like the shamans say. You got to plan your life like you're going to live forever, but live your life like today's your last day. Tell everybody you love them, spend your time doing the good things. Don't put off what you need to do today, but put off what could cause your early demise. A lot of people look at life with the instant gratification mindset. It is a little bit of sacrifice, but the sacrifice is worth it because your body is worth it. And if you don't keep your body and brain active, if you're listening right now and you're functioning, today's the day to start doing it, because you don't want to wait till your doctor says, you know what, we got a problem here. And we've done studies on the brain with people over 90 years old, and they still improve brain function 16% over 6 weeks. So, I mean, that's why I'm saying any age, the brain is like the liver too. It will rebuild itself. So, if you eat the right foods, there's a lot of brain foods out there. We can give some tips on that too, if we want later in the show or whatever. So, I mean, there's tips to movement. I mean, I just did a whole big blitz on Fox television. They had me on because Penn State did a study that showed walking even 10 minutes a day can give you, inoculate you against dementia and Alzheimer's. Just 10 minutes a day, because most people are sitting all day long. They're not moving and breathing. So there's just little things you can do every day. It's not, I wish there was just one pill I could give somebody, but one of my favorite sayings is you can't have the pill without the skill. You got to have the skill. You can take the pill if you want, but if you're going to take the pill, your body is going to wear down, because you don't want your body dependent upon a pill. You want you have the world's greatest pharmacy, and that pill is just interacting with you. So you can use the pill short term, which most people don't understand. SSRIs were only approved for 14 days of use. That's all. But a lot of doctors would tell you you're not even going to feel the benefits for 28 days. Well, placebo is 40%. So what's really working there? Those SSRIs wouldn't even beat out placebos if they were on the market today. So what they're doing is they're getting people's nervous system dependent upon these pills. When, if you need it, if you're going through a crisis right now, you might need it, but get your body back to balance. It's like you don't need that emergency tire in your car until you get to the gas station and can fix the regular tire. A lot of people are like using emergency care for their brain, when your brain can reset itself if you give it the right movement, diet, eating wise, and some kind of brain fitness routines, which I can share today a little bit, some breath work. Of course, BrainTap is our tool of choice, but a lot of people don't have the money or the time, so we'll give them some tips too, so they can start making the improvement.
And it's funny you say that, because that goes to my next question, because you built your career, obviously, training the brain like a muscle. But what first drew you into neuroscience and the mental health work? Because like I said, you didn't just wake up like this. So what happened?
This has been my whole life. Back when I was in second grade, my dad, who was a chronic alcoholic, got help from the church. A sister and a father came over. I was going to a Catholic school, and my dad was an alcoholic, and there was 9 of us. So we were always being visited by the Knights of Columbus and giving us food and clothing. And my dad, they said, hey, we want you to come to this seminar, this relaxation seminar. And it was done by a guy named Jose Silva. And when my dad went there, he had an epiphany. He realized the reason he was drinking was to get rid of stress. And they taught him the stress relieving technique in one night. He came home and he said, you know what? The whole family is going to do this. And my dad, once he does something, he does it full way. So he went back to school, got his PhD, started becoming a Silva instructor. So I grew up with something called the Silva sound. So a lot of your listeners might know about binaural beats and isochronic tones. Well, we were the ones who brought those to the market. So these are ways in which your biological system tunes up. So just like if you were best way to explain it is go to YouTube and put in synchronizing metronomes. You're going to see a guy starts 300 metronomes all at different times, but magically they all synchronize. That's the cells of your body. But what we found is with the right tones, the right frequencies, and the right light, we can tune your brain, the right and left hemisphere of the brain, to balance and get into a calm state. It takes about 7 minutes. But you got to do it differently every time. So I created over 300 or 3,000 distinct ways to train the brain. So they're all different. So you in order to have neuroplasticity. So what started me was in second grade, I was a real troublemaker. I was the most negative person you'd ever see. You wouldn't know it now. They call me Dr. Positive. But at that time, I thought God's only mission was to make my life miserable. And when my dad got help, of course, our family got help. So my dad said to me, look, Patrick, there's one common denominator in your life. You're part of all these bad decisions. It's about you. And he had me read a book called As a Man Thinketh. And that changed my life. And my dad became really good at parenting after that, because most parents do it all wrong. They say, go to your room and think about what you did. That's probably the worst thing you can do psychologically to somebody. That's like our prison system. The reason that we have 2 and 3 time returnees to prison is they're being told to go to prison and think about what they did. Well, that's not going to help them out of the hole. They got to think differently. So what my dad would send us with positive thinking books, like The Power of Thinking Positive, all the different positive thinking books in the 70s and 80s, I had to read them, because every time I got in trouble, my dad would send me to the room to read that book. In each chapter, to get out, I'd have to go out and tell him what I read, how I was going to apply it in my life. And even though I was faking it at first, I didn't believe it. I thought I want to get out and play football or play baseball, whatever's going on. So I would just kind of make it up. But eventually, just by making it up, I started to live it. And I became an honor roll student, a 3-sport captain. And then when I went to school for electronics. And I never was going to do what my dad did. That was just something we did. But I started helping him with seminars. And then I started thinking, wow, this is pretty fun to help see people grow. So it's just been like a lifelong journey for me. And I made my first recording actually when I was 12 years old. So I've been doing it a long time. And when I got a chance to be the researcher for light and sound research, that's when my life really, because light was not a part of the equation before that. It was only sound. Music can do a lot for meditation and relaxation. But when you close your eyes with music only, you shut down 30% of your brain. That's why some people will meditate to a candle, because that candle light flickers at 10 hertz frequency. That's alpha. And every cell of your body has something called mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons, even now while we're sitting here, are evaluating our environment. Is there mold in the air? Is there particulates in the air? Am I getting hit by EMF? What's going on the computer? All these things are happening. And every DNA pair in your body and mine, and everybody listening, every 40 seconds is recalibrating.
This is for anybody who think they want to start a podcast. So is it you? Do you think you want to start a podcast? Cool. Let's be real. Watch this. So we don't need another podcast that sound like everybody else, right? We got enough of them. We're going to talk about those today. But saying the same stuff with no structure, no message, no plan, that ain't good. Now that's where I come in. Me, right here, Head Honcho. All right. So I have a new podcast package. It's called the Legacy Launchpad. Now, what is this? This is for podcasters who fall in the personal development influencer space. So who is that? That would be obviously personal development. That's pretty broad, but coaches and speakers, Christian-based influencers, faith influencers, maybe a pastor, a church, any type of course creator, education, mental health, wellness, nutritionist, all that good stuff. If you are trying to help the betterment of other people, fitness too, then this is for you. I will help you build your podcast from the ground up. This includes toning up, giving you the message, your niche, your show structure, the episode outlines, the intros, outros, descriptions, all of you. Show up to record and I build your legacy. If you're ready to stop playing, let's get it cracking.
It's recalibrating based on everything. That's why they said it was junk DNA back in 2003. But in 2018, they realized this is your body, your biological system is changing so quickly, so rapidly that they couldn't even detect it. Now we know that DNA, they call it epigenetics. So let's say we have the propensity, let's say we're optimistic, our body is going to start operating at its highest level of integrity. Everything you need to do, all the skills. But let's say you go into pessimistic mode. Now your body's got to down-regulate everything
Mm-hmm.
because you can't be as powerful as you are. You can't be positive. You know, you got to stop breathing. You got to. So what got me so interested in it was technology can help us with that. Even in India, which a lot of people go, you're going to go to India with this? They're one of our biggest supporters because the Indian people are trying to become Americans, which is terrible. Stressed out, running for the dollar. There's plenty of time to make money. There's plenty of time. If you don't take care of yourself, you know, there's a problem when the average person retires and only lives 5 years. They retire and expire because they don't have a mission outside of their whatever they think their daily grind is. And then they retire and they don't have anything to live for. We should be building a life worth living again every day and plan on that we're going to live forever. You know, that, I mean, we are living longer. I mean, now, you know, when my grandparents were 64 and 65, I'm 64. I mean, they were like, they hardly moved. You know, they were sitting around waiting to die. And my grandfathers, none of them lived over 65.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart is great, but their heart, and they said I had a propensity maybe for heart problems because both my grandfathers died of heart attacks. I have a strong heart because I take care of it. I eat right. I don't drink alcohol. I work out. I do brain fitness. So there, you know, success leaves clues just as well as, you know, failure. So you got to be willing to look at what you're willing to do. And for me, a little bit of sacrifice, you know, you have to say no a lot because the world wants to package it all up into an easy deliverable package that you can just unwrap. And the problem is that most of the foods we need to eat shouldn't have a wrapper on them. And you know, we should be out moving and breathing, where the easy way, of course, is just go crash on the couch and let the TV do your thinking. But we need our brain to be doing its thinking. I'm not saying get rid of TV, but, you know, be smart about when you're there. I just heard on the news yesterday, I was shocked. They said the average American spends 3 hours a night on the couch watching TV. I'm wondering who's watching my 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know, so there's I think life's too short to spend it in front of the TV. Now there's certain shows we like to watch, you know, and I like comedies the best, you know, it's something to get my mind off it that are kind of mindless. So my brain can kind of freewheel and not have all the stress of running a business. You know, like you're talking about all the stresses you're going through. Those are normal things. You know, when my son was just graduated, I made the mistake of buying him a business. I bought him a franchise and it was called Geeks on Call. He's a computer geek. So I thought it would be good for him. But I started noticing I kept paying all his bills. And I said, you've been in business now 3 months. I said, what's going on? When are you going to be profitable? He goes, well, we're not really doing much. And so I looked at his hours and he was getting up at about 11 o'clock in the morning and ending at 6. And I said, well, you're not working very many hours. He said, yeah, you said as an entrepreneur, you only work half days. I said, Alex, I meant 12 hours of a 24-hour day. That's, you know, when you're self-employed, you work half days. You know, it's now you'll work more. You should be working harder for yourself than you will for somebody else. But the thing is, you have to schedule those time off, like you said. But you also got to do the work. You know, whatever the work is. So I think working smartly. Like I usually, I'm not really good on my text messages and phones and things like that because I don't want to give it the power over me. You know, but it's a very convenient thing, and I'm fortunate I have an assistant that does all that and then tells me when it's important for me. But when I'm on the road, I gotta look at it too. And you know, it's one of those pieces of business now. It used to be, Izzy, you might have liked it when I was first in business. I had an answering machine. I'd leave the office, lock the door, turn on the answering machine. I wouldn't hear anybody till Monday. You know, it's like now it could be Sunday afternoon, somebody calling me from India. You know, and it's a 24-hour clock now. It's not a 8-hour clock. It's like you're on all, you know, you're doing interviews with people all over the country, the world maybe. So, you know, people are contacting us. It's not like, you know, mom and dad's deli shop, you know, where we can just close up shop and do it. This is information. So
yeah, no, I mean, listen, like I said, you didn't drop so many gems already. I haven't even got to the best questions yet. But I love that, you know, even with the whole entrepreneur thing, because like I said, I was a teacher for 6.5 years. So, in education for 6.5 years. And like I said, when I first started my business, my ghostwriting service, it was strictly homework assistance. And then it has now grown into what it is now, you know, and doing social media for professional development influencers like yourself and helping people in that industry, you know, build podcasts from the ground up. You know, it's a lot of work. It's tedious, but I like what I do.
Mhm.
And
That's great.
it is going to be days where you have to say, you know what, I got to do this. Like today is one of those days. I had to produce a podcast earlier today. I'm doing this with you. I have a live stream later tonight. So it's three things in once. And it's like, then I have another recording on Wednesday. So it's just like so many different things. And then behind the scenes, I have to generate their captions. I have to do the titles. I have to make sure everything is aligned and push 2 times a day over here, 3 times over here. And it's like, you know, it can be a lot, but when you enjoy what you do, it's worth it. And that's why I'm really big on my community with, you know, I hate seeing people my age. Like I said, I'm 31. I asked one of my friends out there, I said, what do you want to do with your life? Because he was trying to talk about something he wanted to get into doing. I said, well, do you enjoy that? Like, what is you want to do with your life? I don't know. That's a problem for me, because what that tells me is you told somebody when you were younger what you wanted to do, and they said that wouldn't work, and you internalized it. So that's what I believe. So for me, they told me the same thing, but I just was like, and I believed it for a while, but I woke up a little later. So
I always tell people you have to do what you need to do till you can do what you want to do.
yeah.
So wherever you're at right now, whatever you need to do to pay your bills, to, you know, take care of yourself, you do. But then your free time should be developing that life mission, whatever that is for you. Because once you find that, you'll get paid all the money you need. I've never had to worry about money. I've been very fortunate that because people need mental health, you know. So, but they're and I've always been out there speaking and doing my thing. So, and I love it. And I've always been at a point where I have to watch my time, because that's the most valuable asset. And I do a lot of creative stuff. I've developed over 3,000 sessions on the app. I've written 10 books, and, you know, I'm one of the featured people for Fox News. So every day I do something on Fox News somewhere around the country. So, you know, these are things, but some people I have to say no to, you know, even though I want to say yes. And I say, you know, that's really important. So what I've done is I found other doctors that are, you know, I wish what I did was so unique that nobody else in the universe could do it. But the reality is, once you have the knowledge, you own it. It's like learning mathematics. Once you learn brain fitness, you can practice the techniques and get better. Just like you can go to the gym and get a good trainer, but the reality is what you do without the trainer is what's going to make the difference, because it's not what you do occasionally that's important for brain function. It's what you do consistently that's important for brain function. So, you know, a lot of people, that's why we want to have that, we call it Monday morning motivation. You know, the first Monday of every diet, you know, if you could bottle that motivation, you know, you did everything right that first day, and then the second day it may have been good too, but by the third day, the average diet only lasts 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the problem is, one report showed that the average woman, 60 years old, spent 33 years of her life on a diet. I said, yeah, every Monday through Wednesday. You know, so because every Monday they start a new diet. So it's same with the brain. We need to think of your lifestyle. What can you change and make? Just don't think about what you're going to take away. That's negative thinking. Like, I can't do this, I can't do that. Think about what you're going to do. So like with replacing soda is one of the biggest things people can do, because people are addicted to sodas. But that's the worst thing you can put in your body. Carbonation is not good for the body. Neither is the sugar that's in there. There's 54 teaspoons of sugar in just a Coke. You know, your body's going crazy. You'll never win that battle. You know, now if you do it every once in a while, it's not going to be a problem. But if you do it consistently every day, like I know people who drink Diet Coke, they can't live for 2 hours without it. Well, there's a problem, you know, if you can't do that. So what we'd say is, don't worry about that. Continue to drink your soda, but before you do, you have to drink 3 glasses of water the size of the soda you're going to drink, because that's what your body's going to need to detoxify you from that soda. So you load up first with the water. And then if you still want the soda, you drink it. What'll happen eventually is, every once in a while you might have the soda, but really your body was thirsty. There's a good book called Your Body's Many Cries for Water.
Mm-hmm.
And our body needs water and hydration for the brain. And another just quick tip for everybody that I love to give on radio shows is, think of eating your salad at night, that you should be eating some green leafy vegetables and some purple and blues if you can, you know, get some color in that salad. But instead of using salad dressing, which is full of sugar and toxins, just get some good olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
And put that a tablespoon on there, and then put some Italian seasoning, salt and pepper. If you can do that, there's a 40% less chance you're going to have Alzheimer's. That's what the studies show.
Mm.
And then after your meal, go for a short walk. And you've got that's a really good daily protocol to start with. It's easy. You know.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, now let's transition to the next segment, which is what does this have to do with mental health? And
Okay.
in this segment, we kind of just unpack some things and how this topic correlates with mental health, the study of
Sure.
how we act, think, and feel. So now asking you, you've spoken on stages across the world. What was the most surprising question you've ever been asked about mental health?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that people they think it's a chemical problem in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a chemical problem in the brain. It's a physiological activation problem in the brain. So people are thinking that you can't fix an electrical problem with a chemical. You can block it. You can make people believe that they don't feel so bad, but medicating someone is not the same as helping them to live a good life. So when you think of neurotransmitters, you have to go through sleep is probably the best way to build them. So in mental health, I think that the first thing they should look at is how can we get people sleeping again? 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping. And even Formula One drivers, when deprived of sleep for 3 days, they can't perform even 90% of their skill level.
Mm.
These are professional athletes. So what's it going to do to the person who's eating garbage and not moving and breathing? And they're just going to wake up in the morning. And some people think they have a healthy breakfast by eating drinking coffee and a bagel. So we need to look at what we're feeding our bodies. But I think the question is that they think that I'm not against medication. I'm against the abuse of medication. And I think too many
Mm.
people are abusing medication. It should only be used as a triage and then get the person the skills that they need because our brain is designed to heal and function. It's not
Yeah, it
designed
is.
to, every time you put a pill into the body, your body has to react to that poison. It's not good for your body. Most of what's in that pill is not what's making you make the change. It's inert fillers and things like that. So it's toxic. So it always surprises me when I'm being asked that why am I not approving the people taking these pills because they don't do anything. There's never been a study better than 12%. So that's worse than even placebo. Like I said, placebo's 40%. So that means that in my world of psychology, they're talking people out of the change. They should be changing, but they're not giving people they're not facilitating the change, in other words. If I go to the gym and tell you all about working out, but we never work out, your muscles aren't going to get any stronger. I need to give you exercises to work out the brain, to get you doing things, getting you active. Now I can be a coach. But I'm not going to be able to I'm not going to be able to get on the ball field and hit the ball for you or catch the ball or throw the ball. You've got to do that. So.
Okay. Now let's kind of shift back to some things I also want to bring up this episode. So short form videos. We talk about BrainTap. We've had a lot of great conversation about the mind and not moving enough. And one thing that has plagued this generation is technology, short form videos.
Mhm.
We've normalized distraction so much that it feels uncomfortable to just sit in silence. And like I said, even with me, sometimes it's like I start to look at something. I start to think about something. I need to look at my phone. I have to, in my case, I have to literally put my phone, like throw it across the room. And sometimes you have to do those extremes. I'm big on extremes because sometimes that works.
Mhm.
I have a point, and this is the global public health threat of short form videos. So it says, according to a study published in Neuroimage and reported by news.com, excessive consumption of short form videos like TikTok can overstimulate the brain's reward system, impair focus, emotional control, and memory while encouraging impulsive behavior. This kind of content rewires your attention chemistry, creates brain fog, doom scrolling, and erodes real world productivity and mental resilience. And then another one says this is the passive phone presence lowers attentional control. A 2025, this is a recent experimental study found that just having your smartphone within sight can significantly reduce attentional control even if you're not using it. Knowing the phone is nearby constantly divides your focus and increases distraction, and makes it harder to engage meaningful spiritual tasks like reflection, prayer, or focused conversation. So, like I just said, even before I read that point, in some cases I have to throw my phone where I can't even see it because even just thinking about it, you might think, let me check this out. Or maybe I missed this, and maybe I missed that. And it's just like an endless battle. How does BrainTap help in that endless battle?
Well, there's something called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. That's what we're really talking about here. The part of the brain that is the reward center. So think about it. It's always vigilant. It wants a reward. We're goal-striving beings. So let's say that your default mode network, which is what happens when you're not present. They say 25% of the time you're kind of go on autopilot. You find yourself driving across town or watching a show. You don't really know, the time just goes. You don't know what's happening. Well, most people think that meditation is mindlessness. It's not. When you close your eyes, especially if you don't have stimulus keeping the visual cortex going, your default mode network is going to go crazy because it thinks you're trying to go to sleep, but you're awake, but you don't know if you're safe. You start to listen to that internal dialogue, and you haven't worked on the internal dialogue. You have to change that dialogue, because that dialogue is one based in fear, because that's what kept us alive. We're the benefactors of our genetic inheritance of a bunch of paranoid people. We lived, our ancestors lived, and we're here, but they now know. In fact, the Hopi Indians said 7 years of their ancestors are controlling their life now. Our geneticists said 7 generations of DNA is playing out inside you right now. So that's weird, isn't it? Spooky. How did the Hopi Indians know it? And then now neuroscientists are telling it that your parents and their parents and their parents and their parents are playing out inside you right now. So that's why it's so important to settle in. Are these thoughts your thoughts? Were they trained by your parents? Were they your brother and sister? Were they a preacher or a teacher? All these things, some way you've got to sort all that out to realize that you're okay. You might have made some bad decisions, but guess what? Every day the game gets reset. And I always tell people, imagine waking up in the morning and this is a game. We gave you a name. We gave you a bank account. We gave you a place to live, maybe even in a relationship. Maybe we gave you kids. But imagine every morning that it's a game. You have to first figure out where you're at. Do you like where you're at? Make it better. If you don't like where you're at, what can you do today to move in that direction? What will happen is, now that what I'm talking about, that interior cingulate, it will now start looking for opportunities for you to make that change. Now, if you're pessimistic, that cingulate shuts down. You don't have any choices anymore, because you can't have choices if a bear's chasing you, right? You just get the heck out of there. You go into autopilot and you run. So it's important that we learn to handle stress with an open mind, that we need stress. And I love it when people say, can you help me just get rid of all my stress? I said, that'll happen one time in your life. It'll be very brief. And after that, you're going to be dead. Because if we don't have stress, we wouldn't even be able to stand up. So there's always stress in our body in some form. The problem is, and you're talking about, there's been studies that show we don't even have the capacity of a goldfish, which is 5 seconds. And what's happening is, when somebody scrolls now, how can you grab their attention? Now, I had one video that over 3 million views, and I don't know, I said something I always say, but for some reason, the way they did the graphics and all that, people went crazy watching it. You know what I mean? And you think you say something profound and you put it out there and it doesn't do anything. So it's like, you never know, because I think we used to have attention span of 2.5 minutes before technology. Now they say it's less than 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so we have to build that in. That's a training, because we're being untrained, right, to be attention deficit. And I don't think attention deficit's that bad either. Most creative geniuses, most successful entrepreneurs, you got to be a little ADD. I mean, you got to step outside the box and get creative, because the problems, like Einstein said, you can't solve the problem on the same level it was created. You got to go to the solution state, keep the solution in mind, and return to the problem and solve it. That's where that attention deficit comes from. The brain tapping into that creativity.
Yeah, and I think that's crazy too, because, well, it was a phrase I heard I think it was Kanye West. He said, "Name one genius that ain't crazy," and most really smart people are often deemed crazy. They are seen as oddballs. They think here, there, and everywhere, and they have to really learn how to let that. They have to control it, but still let it have its own way, in a sense, if that makes sense. I'm trying to get that out. But
I was trying to tell people, is that you can be crazy in your mind, but don't be crazy outside of it, because people will, you can, in your mind, you can be as crazy as you want. There's no law against it. So you can experiment. You can, like Einstein used to do thought experiments. You should be doing, that's what brain fitness is all about, planning your future instead of letting it happen by default. I mean, you know what's going to happen. Deepak Chopra said 97% of what's going to happen to you tomorrow is you know about today. So what are you pretending not to know? Plan on
Right.
doing it with skill and efficiency and joy and health and, with grace, and then the body will show up that way.
No, for sure, for sure. And then I guess I have another post or point. It says distractions undermine deliberate decision making. Research published in Frontiers in Cognition indicates that constant digital distractions reduce cognitive capacity for careful deliberation. Studies show that interruptions like a text ping during a decision-making task lead to poorer, more impulsive decisions. This erodes long-term clarity, spiritual discernment, and the ability to lead thoughtfully. And I think that we see so much of that because a lot of times I've done it. Been reading a book. Ding, phone goes off. You check your phone. Now you on the phone. You got to go back and reread what you just read. And it was a good point. It just happens too much to where it's like, okay, we have a problem. But like I said, I'm thankful that I'm going to speak for myself. And then many other people who are scared to say it for themselves that this is a problem. We won't help. And this is something we need to address.
Right.
Let's
And that's
move.
why like doing breath exercises is
Uh-huh.
one easy way to do it because you're going to focus on numbers and
Yeah.
breath. So maybe it's a good time to tell them the 3 different times a day to do breath work and some easy things. One is in the morning, we do psychological breathing in the morning. We teach that. Or you can do what they call breath of fire, if you know what that is. But psychological breathing is very easy. In the morning, you breathe in. We do this anyway, like when we get fed up with something or we're overtired or we get frustrated, we go, we do it normally. This psychological breath will reset. It's kind of like if you have a dog, you've seen them shake. They're trying to do that too. They're trying to do the psychological breath. But in the morning, this triggers a brainwave called SMR, sensory motor rhythm. This one atrophies as we stress during the day, but we need it for cognitive thinking to keep that frontal lobe going. So I recommend 4 to 5 minutes of this breathing in the morning, and then set for a moment. Set as long as you can. If it's 30 seconds, that's better than nothing. But remember the time you set, and just let the thoughts come into your mind like wind through an open window. Whatever, once you let the thoughts of the day go, then you can get into some creative thoughts. But don't worry about it. And then in the middle of the afternoon, when at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, what's going to happen to everybody around the world? Your temperature is going to drop 2 degrees. That's when you're going to do a theta session, or you're going to do what we call box breathing. Box breathing is what the military teaches the Navy SEALs. So imagine you're one of 5 people, you're going to go take on a battleship. You're kind of, I would be a little scared maybe, on the way there. So this box breathing is very easy to do. You just set, you can do it with your eyes open or closed. You can do it at a stoplight even. You breathe into the mental count of 4, you hold it for the mental count of 4. You breathe out to the count of 4, you hold it out to the count of 4. It makes a box. And if you can do that just as slowly as you can, and even if you can increase it to 5 or 6, it's even better. But start with 4. And what will happen is it will regulate your nervous system, getting you out of sympathetic drive, which is the fight or flight, stress state, and into a parasympathetic, the rest, digest, and recovery state. And you'll feel the shift. It might happen in a minute, it might happen in 2 minutes. Now you're exercising the nervous system. This is something most people don't do. And then the third time where you really need to practice brain fitness that doesn't take any time away from you. You do this at bed right before sleep. So when you're ready to go to sleep, when you're rolling over in the pillow and you don't have to do anything else, your eyes are closed, you're going to do what we call the 4-8 breath. Now this breath is important because when you breathe in, you're going to also exercise the sympathetic system. You're going to feel some fear, maybe some frustration from the day. You want to own that. You don't want to deny it. The more you deny it, it chases you like your shadow. So you want to focus on that, and then, but now slowly breathe out to the count of 8, and just kind of move your awareness, this body awareness, down through your body as you breathe out. And when you get to 8, you cycle it again. And pretty soon, when your body is starting to relax, you can start thinking on the exhale of everything you're grateful for. And you might have to start with simple things like, I'm grateful for the house I'm in. I'm grateful for the bed I'm sleeping in. I'm grateful for the sheets that are over me. Whatever is simple, but you want to get into a gratitude because this triggers neurotransmitter activity that's going to have you feeling better in the morning. Our body needs to know that you should be grateful for what you have right now, but always striving to better yourself or put yourself in a better position. That's fine. But when you deny yourself whatever you have right now, that deny, and it shows up as low self-esteem, low self-confidence, self-worth. You are the best you right now. Congratulations for making it into Izzy's podcast. This is your birthday because now you're awake. You can't ever not know this information again. You
Right.
have a powerful brain. You can trigger it to do incredible things for you. but
Yeah.
it's not going to do it by default. The world does not want you to be that way. Unfortunately, they want you to spend money and eat a bunch of garbage foods and sit in front of the TV and be programmed to be angry at each other. The reality is that I was being interviewed in Arizona once. They started the Positive News Network. I thought, this is great, because they have to scour the whole world to get us 1 hour of bad news. And then people from all over the world will watch it and they feel miserable because they can't do anything about it.
Right.
So, but they found out nobody would watch the positive news. In your neighborhood right now, in your town, there's probably more good news that could fit a day on TV. Focus on that. Focus on your family and your community, having the good news, and it'll change your perception of reality.
So I'm gonna respond to that, but let me go to the next segment real quick, which is I challenge that. And in this segment, this is where we kind of challenge some of the things we've been talking about, right? So I want to respond to the comment about the positive news and how they could get nobody to watch it. So even with, breaking the fourth wall, everyone knows on my Mondays I do the live streams. And in those live streams, I specifically speak on things that are currently going on in the pop culture related, because the podcast obviously is not pop culture, but in pop culture, and tie it to how it relates to mental health, and I unpack it in a way. How it's framed, it's almost like it's like a bunch of mess. It's framed like a TMZ from the titles and the descriptions, but when you actually listen to it, we barely talk about the scenario. We more so bring it up as a point of reference and then relate it to us and how would we handle this situation? What would we do? And what did that person do right? So it's actually something positive framed as negative. And it's unfortunate that we live in a society where you have to frame it like mess in order to get people to see it's really,
exactly.
you know what I'm saying?
That's perfect, because all thoughts are beads on a string. So that trigger gets them to watch. But now it's like you got them into the scenario before they knew it. Now they're exposed to positive information. And that's what they want. They want to know that we've been fed so long about the negativity and that drives behavior. But the reality is that a lot of people will run toward a goal. We just need to be trained to do that. But society trains us to run away from fear and take the easy way out. The leaders of the world and those that are the healthiest are the ones that take action and do things differently. So congratulations. I think that's great. And I think today might be a different time. People might listen to positive news now. This was back in the late 80s. So, I think that people are understanding, hey, I can control my consumption because of all the podcasts, and they can control what they listen to. They're not just getting three different three different stations, and that's all the information they get. Now we have like infinite information. So that's great.
So now this is the challenge section. So we got to challenge some things. So I brought this up earlier and I made this statement about being an entrepreneur, right? I told you the things that I do. And say, for instance, you might say, okay, well, I'm not just doom scrolling. I'm on my phone checking to see who's reaching out. Did I get this done? Did I get that done? What would be your response to somebody who feels like, well, I have to work, or I'm optimistic, anticipating a new client will reach out, or word of mouth will go? What would be
there's things you can do. What I'm a big believer in is, remember, you got to do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. Right. So if you have to do these things, I would get a grounding mat from Clint Oper. Just go to earthing.com. They're on every one of our computers here. Because while you're in front of computers, that computer is giving off radiation and your cells are responding to it. Now, 20% of people are very sensitive to that, but the other 80, and some people are like bulletproof, but it's affecting you in some way. But if you can ground yourself, we've taken people by 5G towers, and this is something you can do at Lowe's or Home Depot. They have both ohm meters, right? They measure electricity across a circuit. Well, you have electricity in you right now. It should be 0 point. If you're walking barefoot outside, you'd be 0 point. But most people we measure have 3 volts of energy moving through their body. That's like driving through Texas and you're hearing 2 different radio stations and neither one will come in. So the cells are getting bad communication. But if while you're on the phone, you're either grounding yourself, it's like you're outside, but you can be inside. Now your body's not getting that negative input. If you're on the phone a lot, then you'll wear some kind of blue blocking glasses, or something like that, because blue light, we need blue light. I'm a big one that says they overdo it. Like when I see a biohacker, like if I was talking to them right now, it's 2:00 in the afternoon, they're wearing blue blocker glasses. I'm looking at somebody who's looking for sadness, because if you don't have blue light, you're going to have seasonal affective disorder. So you don't wear your blue blockers all day long just because they're cool. But at 6:00 at night, or if you're overstimulating your eyes, there's more mitochondria in your eyes than there are in any other part of the body by square centimeter. So that means that energy is being absorbed by that mitochondria. Now it's being absorbed from a screen of 1,000,000 different pixels.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different than what we do at BrainTap. We only use 8 LEDs. That screen is over 1,000,000. But we want to, that screen also, when you say you go to sleep to a television, that's because the television 60 hertz, 10 hertz frequency. It's putting you into alpha. The problem is you don't know what they're saying while you're in alpha. So you're being programmed by the news or commercials. That's what I always recommend if you're going to do it. Find a piece of beautiful music, or like my wife does, she'll put it on, like some kind of thunderstorm, whatever. So if you need music in the background, white noise, because you're probably highly auditory, where a lot of people can't sleep if they have any noise. But when my wife and I got married, I said, I listen to my affirmations every night when I go to sleep, and they play on autoplay. So they're just playing all the time. And I put some nice music in the background of them, and it's been working for 34 years. So, that's the way that it works. So it's not like the TV is not the best way, but what your brain's telling you is, hey, it's getting us out of that beta mode, getting us into alpha. There's better ways to do it. So while you're on your phone, you could be, there's a screensaver I saw that I got sent to me, and I've been using it now. It goes over my phone. It turns my phone's light into infrared light. So I'm being healed while I'm using my phone now. My phone gives out, I'm on the board of Radiation Nation with Dan DeBon, and my phone is protected. It gives off no radiation.
Yeah.
So you want to do this because I'm on the phone too much to be worried about, how my brain's going to respond to radiation.
Yeah. No, good stuff. I like all of that because, and it's funny because a lot of times, and I'm glad you pointed out, sometimes if you're going to do it, there's a way you go about it. So if you're going to have the sound going on, you don't want just, and nothing's wrong. We love our sitcoms, but we don't want a sitcom playing. You want something positive playing. At least if you're going to have some noise or something going on, that at least is something positive. Now, we've talked about distractions. We've talked about, people. We haven't. That's what we're about to actually talk about is people. Now, this is my next challenge. What if it's a person that is the distraction? We talked about the phone being the distraction. We talked about, not doing this. But what if it's a person in our life or people that are the distractions?
Well, then we teach people to become more assertive. You've got to become the number one person in your life. Just like getting on an airplane, they say, hey, take care of your own oxygen first before you try to put a mask on another. So many people are busybodies trying to save the world, but they're not saving themselves. Mm-hmm. So you got to be a little selfish. And it's important to tell people, like my wife knows I need time alone every day. I can't, because I'm around people and talking. When I'm in my alone time, that's my time. Just let me meditate, whatever I'm going to do. Don't disrupt me. You need to be able to tell them that. And there are energy drainers and energy gainers. So when this is a true thing, there are energy vampires. When they come around you, they drain you of your energy. You're like, that person just wears me out, or whatever. And the room gets a little darker when they step into it. You want to have enough energy stores built up that you can handle those people because they're going to show up. So you got to charge up your cells, charge up your life, and know, hey, you're on purpose, you're doing your thing. But if there's a person, and what I do, and my dad taught me this actually earlier, says you do what you need to do, and those people never show up because they're not on the same path. Don't fall prey to, don't lose your way because a family member, a friend, or coworker or something is trying to get you to do something out of your norm. We have to be assertive, and that takes a lot of self-confidence. That's when knowing who you are is so important, that you're not just this biological being. You are a spiritual being, have a physical reality. You have this energy about you that needs to be replenished. And whatever you need to do that, you need to be clear with everyone you're with and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And if they're not willing to do that, then you have to distance yourself from them because you only have so much energy every day. We wake up and get 100%. If they're going to take 30% of it and wear you out, you're not going to be able to do your best work. So, it's important to say yes when it's important to say yes, and say no when it's important to say no.
Exactly. Now let's move into the final segment for today, which will be the weekly sabbatical. So you already kind of did a good job of prefacing that with you saying, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And again, with distractions as people, there are actually biblical examples of this. So Peter to Jesus in Matthew 16:21-23, it says, Jesus revealed he must suffer and be killed. And Peter rebuked him, saying, Never, Lord. Jesus immediately identified this as a distraction from his divine mission, saying, Get behind me, Satan. This is an example that shows that even those close to us can be distractions when they prioritize comfort over calling. So in our daily routines, we do that in subtle ways. Now, this was obviously him dying for our sins, right? For the sins of the world, the people then, the past, and to come. That's extreme. But what about when we prioritize, and I've done it. You're about to go to you have some work. You have an ebook. I'm talking to myself. I have an ebook I need to finish. Hey, we about to go out to eat. You want to come? Yeah, let's do it. You just put calling on hold because it's like, well, it'll be there to go eat. And it's like, no, this needs to get done first. And sometimes that's why it says people can be distractions. And we think we might have got it down with the phones. And okay, I'm only going to allow myself this much time on TikTok, but we all have our weaknesses. And I think one thing is we have to know and what our weaknesses are. We have to know what is our triggers, what will bring us back into that situation. I had a revelation about something yesterday where what triggers, even with people who like struggle with porn, and they might say, so they might have to get to the point. A lot of them say, what triggers it? What gets you to the point where you say, I need to go look, where you were just fine the whole week. Now, all of a sudden you want to go look at that toxicity. What triggered it? And I think a lot of times we don't know what our weaknesses are. So what are some ways
that's why at night I teach people with that on BrainTap, we do it, but with the 4-8 breath, you make a review of your day. Start reviewing your day and being honest. In AA, they would say that, we work with a group called Lucid. It's a group of sobriety people. And the big thing is you got to be honest with yourself. Don't deny who you are. I mean, you did the best you could yesterday with all the information. If we could go back in time with the time machine, there's a few things I'd like to change, but we can't go backwards. So we have to make peace with our past. And we have to realize the way our brain stores things neurologically. Most of us will store all good memories in color, with sound, with memory. And when we remember them, we feel good. Most people will store negative memories short term. They'll become black and white and they'll fade from our mind. What happens though, if you have enough bad experiences or traumatic experiences, they become coded in color. They become coded with sound. They become triggered responses like a remote control. People can say something and triggers it. A sound can happen and can trigger it. A visual cue can trigger it. These are all things that we have to learn to desensitize and not give away our remote control to someone else. This is when my kids were growing up. They'd say, Dad, you're making me angry. I said, great. I have your remote control. I'm going to put you to sleep. And I would just joke with them and point to get them to start thinking, I can't make you angry. I can only do what I do. Your experience with me can be anger, but it's not me making you angry. You had to take whatever I did and make it anger for you. So if we take back that control, emotion drives behavior. So if we are, when you have a good night's sleep and you're emotionally charged and something bad happens, you have the skill set to handle it. You go, oh, let's just take care of it. But if you had a bad night's sleep, you didn't eat well, you're feeling tired, and that same thing happens, you could blow up at the little Jimmy, instead of saying, hey, let's pick up the plate, it's no problem. You might say, the end of the world's coming, you broke a plate. And, and now this is what happened to us when we were growing up, right? Parents didn't go to parent university. So we got to clean up all that, and that's when that quiet time is so important, that when those thoughts come up, if it's a good memory, you want to store it in color, relive it, reclaim the emotion from that experience. That's a resource. Any negative experience that comes up, you want to put it in a box, make it a black and white picture, but you need to take your optimistic hat on and say, what was the positive benefit of that event? There's a country song. I'm not really big into country because there's usually negative singing, but when the country song it's all about he thanks God for unanswered prayers. He's at a reunion 30 years after, and he sees Peggy Sue or whatever, and she's not what she was in high school, and so he's thanking God. It's a joke, but it's still, there's a power greater than us that's controlling our destiny. If we, that power, whatever you want to call it, of course, I was brought up Christian and Catholic. So, we've got Jesus helping, showing us by example. But whatever you're doing, someone has to show you the example and realize that in the past, you did the best you could. Get rid of the shame, the guilt, the resentment. Negative emotions never serve you. So we got to learn to really, they almost like crystallize in your body like a radio station, and they get triggered by different times of the day, different words, And tiredness seems to cause them. So that's why energy is so important.
Yeah.
Keeping your energy up by eating the proper foods in that.
So, like I said, so many gems have been dropped this episode. Like I can't even keep up. So that's why I said I can't wait to go back and watch. What's the difference between, because we will do this, you get again, you kind of preface that again with saying we got to let go of the shame, hurt, but what is the difference between a person not being able to recognize the difference between discipline and punishment, and how can men avoid being too hard on themselves?
Right. Well, I think the big thing is it should all be looked at as we're the world will keep score. Your body will keep score. If you have an illness or whatever, it should be discipline. There's no punishments here.
Yeah.
The you can punish yourself if you want to, beat yourself up, but look at negative emotional programming. The biggest business in America right now is building prisons. That means that system is broken. It's not working. If I've always wanted to say, if somebody gets in trouble, we should retrain their brains to think of what could you do when you get out of here? What could to be a valued member of society? You know what I mean? There's a skill there, there's a talent there, there's somebody crying out for help. But now they send them into prison and they don't teach them anything. They teach them maybe some skill that they don't even like. Find out what they love, because once you find out what you love, you'll never work another day in your life.
Right.
But as long as you feel like, gosh, the worst day when I had my franchise, we had 108 locations, and we'd ask a question on the intake form. Do you like your job? 92% of the people that came through our clinic doors said no. That's a bad statistic. You spend 1/3 of your life at your job. So if you're miserable 1/3 of your life, that's punishment. So you might have to do that right now. But you could go to school, you could get an online degree, there's so many things you can do. Go find what you love to do, because it's like going on a long trip. And I still remember we were doing a book tour and my son was young, and we get in the car, we just leave to go on the road, and we're not even out of the city yet. I'm bored, Dad. Well, he had a TV to watch, he had books to read, and I said, Alex, there's no boring times, there's only boring people. We need to make you more interesting. People are so used to being entertained by the 8-second video that they forgot that we entertain ourselves. When we were kids, we could make believe, and whether we were Michael Jordan or we were a football player, whatever, if we were playing a sport, or if we all have role models. So we have to re-engage that part of our brain again to bring back that childlike attitude and give ourselves permission to fail. The only way you succeed. There's a saying that my teacher, Richard Bandler, who's the founder of NLP, said. He said, anything worth doing well is worth doing terrible at first. In our days of YouTubers and social media, everybody thinks you got to stick it on the first time. You got to, like those guys that do those crazy things where they bounce things off the walls and everything. And then you go back and watch the YouTube, it says 1,700 tries to get this one done. But they only show you the one that worked. They didn't show you the 1,006 that didn't.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that you're going to fall down, you're going to fail, but failure is never final. The Chinese proverb that said, to succeed, you must fail 3 times, but get up 4.
Mm-hmm.
So know that failure gives clues, and you can change and be optimistic. That builds neuroplasticity and will give you better brain function.
All right. Now, this is my final question for the day. What's one distraction you see men underestimating the most right now, and how should they confront it?
I think just letting kids have screen times anytime they want. That attention span you're talking about, that's going to hurt them, because now they got to go back into the classroom, and that teacher's got to keep them entertained every 7 to 8 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have to build, I'm not against kids having phones, but it should be, they should be taught to use them the way they're designed to. I mean, when I was growing up, we had a phone on the wall. We didn't have phones in our pockets.
Right.
This is like Star Trek or something to us. So here we go. And, they can be a very beneficial thing, or they can be a negative thing. But I think it's being underestimated, because a lot of people are just using their phones and their iPads. These are the babysitters of the future. And
Right.
who's training our kids? It used to be grandma and grandpa or parents, and family members. Now they just say, hey, sit there with the digital box and it'll make you smart. Well, that might have worked for Spock on Star Trek, but I don't think it's going to work for most of us.
Right. All right. Good stuff. Question or challenge for the week. For my audience, how do you plan to lessen your screen time this week? I want to see how do you think you can do that? Because even if you go from 9 hours to 8 hours, you made progress. Small victories are still victories. So we just have to see what we can do to interrupt that just a little bit. This has been a great episode. This is one of those episodes. It happens every so often. All of them are full of gems, but this one of those ones I really feel like I want people to take notes. I want people to sit, and when I do my intro, I'm gonna make sure I say like, "Hey, make sure you all take notes," because this is the one where you need to just let play, because it's so many gems and it's things that really can combat some of these issues that we struggle with, and especially a person like myself being open and transparent about it. So obviously everything will be in the description, but is there anything else you want to add or promote while we're here before we go?
Well, I think they could go on to BrainTap and do 14 days on the Brain Fitness Challenge. It's free. And then if they don't like it, just cancel it. And then you'll only be charged on the 14th day if you want to keep it. But go there and you can try those 3 different times of the day meditations. And there's one called the Quick Start, 21-day Quick Start. Just do the first 14 days of that and see if you're not sleeping well. 90% of people that do that in our studies show that they have their best night's sleep within 3 nights. So it's a way to, and it's free for the first 13 days. So if you don't like it, just cancel it. But that's something that's important. And then, of course, they want to hear more from me, they can go to Dr. Patrick Porter on any social media site, and they'll see videos I've done with other people and things going on. But we want to better 1 billion brains. That's my mission. And in order to do it, we need people like you, Izzy, who are sharing the message out with the world, and let people know that you can change your brain at any age. You're not sentenced to death. If your brain can be upgraded at any time. And you don't have to pay Bill Gates or Apple. You have your own operating system. So own it and improve upon it.
All right, good stuff. Sounds good. All right, thank you for joining us today. Thank y'all for tuning in. PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And as always, remember, I love us for real.